Good day, I'm Erica Denise Rivera from BSTM2A, and today I am going to present some of the ethical issues that we encounter in the tourism and hospitality industry, and also the documentation that will justify the said information. The first ethical issue is the environmental destruction. It's ironic, really, that tourism all too often destroys the environment that it relies on. For tourism to be ethical, stakeholders need to ensure that any damage to the environment is minimized. This includes a range of aspects such as reducing the CO2 emissions, to picking up litter, to reducing the amount of plastic that we use.
Tourism is big business. If we take a look at the numbers, a lot more people are traveling now. There are about 1.4 billion international arrivals a year. That number was only 25 million less than 70 years ago. Tourism can be great for a local economy, but what it leaves in its wake can be, well, trashy.
No matter where you go, no matter what remote area, they have the same problems. What do you do with human waste? What do you do with solid waste?
Alton Byers has been visiting Everest every year for the last 40 years and is working to develop waste management strategies in the villages near Everest. Tourists end up producing 4.8 million tons of trash per year, and 14% of that is solid waste. And it's the big sites with the biggest problems. Mount Everest, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge are all struggling with an increase of trash left behind.
I think you have to think about it as you're going to someone else's home. What would you do in your own home? And would you do the same thing in someone else's home?
The island of Boracay in the Philippines, the base camp at Everest in China, are some of the sites that have had to shut their doors to tourists to take care of the pileup of trash. But why is the pileup of trash growing?
Tourism is now super accessible. Even 10, 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't necessarily that easy or affordable to just hop on a plane and go somewhere. So now suddenly everyone can. And so I think in addition to that, when you have your bit more of that disposable society approach, where it's just as easy, you get a water bottle and you just toss it on the side when you're done.
So what is being done about the trash that continues to pile up at tourist sites around the world?
The tourist needs to have their awareness increase and they need to do their part, okay? Lodges need to see that this, and well, I think they know that this is unsustainable. What's going on? The practice is not sustainable. They need to start developing recycling technologies if they're realistically going to address the problem. So everybody is a player in this.
That includes restaurants and hotels at tourist landmarks.
We work a lot at the Foundation on circular economy approaches, and part of that is, how do you not just transform the consumption side, but also the production side? So do we need to have the plastic straws and the plastic cups and the disposable everything in our tourist areas, in our hotels, in our visiting centers?
Byers and Boudoir both tapped into a similar solution to tackle the growing pile of trash at tourist sites around the world, and that is to be more mindful, raise our awareness as tourists, tour companies, accommodation providers, and eliminate trash together as a global community.
The second ethical issue is the animal welfare. Wildlife tourism has moved towards the forefront of consumer awareness in recent years. People are now largely empathetic to the animals' rights and welfare. People are now preparing to visit safari parks over zoos, going to animal sanctuaries and conservation projects, and volunteering their time to help rather than to hinder. Nonetheless, maltreatment of animals does still happen in many contexts around the world, from dolphins in captivity to cat cafes to riding an elephant.
Sadly, there are also many negative impacts that are associated with wildlife tourism. It has the potential to do so much good, but also to do so much bad. Many businesses are poorly managed and they demonstrate unethical behaviours. Let me give you some examples. Mistreatment of animals. The mistreatment of animals is common, especially in developing countries. Fortunately, there is a lot more awareness of this nowadays than there once was. Recent years have seen many laws and regulations introduced in the name of animal welfare all over the world. This has helped to reduce the mistreatment of animals in the wildlife tourism business. Nevertheless, mistreatment does still occur and it is pretty common. There are still circuses that use animals and attractions that make animals perform tricks for tourists. From elephant camps in Thailand to monkeys dressed as babies in Morocco. There are many examples of mistreatment.
The third ethical issue is the discrimination and harassment. Law requires organizations to have equal employment opportunities to the employers. Organizations must recruit a diverse workforce, enforce policies and training that support an equal opportunity program, and foster an environment that is respectful of all types of people. Harassment and discrimination are arguably the largest ethical issues that impact workplace today. Should harassment or discrimination take place in the workplace? The result could be catastrophic for your organization, both financially and reputationally. The discrimination and harassment of employees based on race, ethnicity, gender, disability, or age occurs. Not only has an ethical line been crossed, but a legal one as well.
Beginning in the early 1960s, lawmakers in the United States started revolutionizing the American workplace. In a process that continues to this day, governments began creating legal rights for various groups of people to be free from workplace discrimination and harassment. In the 50 years that followed, individuals gained the right to be free from discrimination and harassment motivated by a number of protected characteristics. Those include race, color, national origin, gender, religion, age, disability, genetic information, and a number of others. Today's discussion is designed to help you understand your rights and your responsibilities when it comes to illegal discrimination in the workplace. Now, in my years as a practicing labor and employment attorney, I've come to the realization that most people understand these laws and recognize how important they are to our society. The overwhelming majority of people just don't engage in workplace behavior that might be insulting or offensive to others. But I can also tell you that unlawful discrimination and harassment do still happen. Sometimes that behavior is motivated by an intentional prejudice or a hatred. And other times, people violate the law without meaning to do so. It may be a lack of understanding the law, or it may be a lack of understanding how some behaviors can be interpreted and taken by other groups of people. In fact, in 2013, the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission processed almost 100,000 individual formal charges of discrimination by workers. Even though most of those charges were ultimately dismissed, that number alone should tell you that the issues of discrimination and harassment are still very much in the minds of the American workforce. So that brings us back to the point of today's presentation. Your employer absolutely prohibits discrimination and harassment in the workplace. It does not expect you or anyone else to tolerate that type of behavior. This presentation is designed to help you recognize improper behavior and give you the tools to properly react. So by the end of this presentation, you should understand illegal discrimination and harassment, how to respond to them, and what the consequences of those behaviors should be. The result should be a healthy and positive workplace for everyone.
The fourth ethical issue is the exploitation of children. Sadly, children are exploited with the tourism industry more often than we care to admit. There are many jobs that kids do that are indirectly linked to the tourism industry. From working in factories, to farm work, to begging, to sex tourism.
Sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism
is the act of sexually exploiting a person under the age of 18.
Immediate in the context of travel, tourism, or both.
25% of sex workers on the streets in Cebu, Philippines,
and 30% of sex workers in Indonesia are under the age of 18.
While 26% of working boys in Sihanoukville, Cambodia
indicated that they had engaged in sexual activities with foreigners in exchange for money, food, or other benefits.
Contractual marriage and child trafficking are increasing. Children aged 12 or younger are taken to Thailand from neighboring countries to engage in commercial sex work.
8 of 10 Vietnamese girls that are sexually exploited
had been sold by their own family members for their economic survival.
Traveling sex offenders often take advantage of vulnerabilities such as poverty,
social exclusion, and weak laws that offer a culture of impunity. As part of the society, we have an important part to play.
If you see something suspicious, please do not silence.
and report it to the authorities.
In collaboration with our governments and civil society organizations, AIPA, as the voice of ASEAN people, strives to end sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism. Follow us and support your parliamentarians in their fight against sexual exploitation of children.
The last ethical issue is sex tourism. The sex tourism industry is pretty significant. While many people like to pretend it doesn't exist, the truth is that this is a multi-million-dollar industry. However, many people who work in the sex trade do not want to be there. Some are forced into this line of work against their will, and some are only children.
Sa Angeles, problema talaga o issue. Lahat ng mga foreigner, iba-ibang klaseng foreigner nandito. 19 years old ako nung nangyari yon. Tapos sabi niya sa akin kung sasama pa daw ako. Binayaran niya ako, 800 yata. Tapos nung umalis yung foreigner na yun, hindi ko alam na buntis na ako.
Iniisip ko po siya araw-araw. Hindi ko po alam kung saan siya nakatira. Sana po kahit po makita ko lang po siya sa panaginip.
Ako si Marika Bardahe Pabile. Nanay ako ni John Givier. Isang beses, siguro mga 4 years old pa lang siya, nagtanong siya kung nasaan yung tatay niya. Pero ang alam ko lang, Charlie ang pangalan niya. Taga-German siya.
Opo, pwede ko po, ay gusto ko rin po siyang makita isang araw. Ko na po siya kahit mula nung bata pa ako, hindi ko pa siya nakita. Ano po, mahal ko po siya kahit ganun.
Iniisip ko rin, bakit kaya parami ng mga tao rito? Eh, wala naman mga tatay. Bakit? Kaming mga babae, tinatanong namin, unang-unang tinatanong talaga namin, gumamit kayo ng protection para na rin sa kanila, sa amin. Eh, kasi yung ibang foreigner ayaw nila eh. Eh, wala kang magagawa. Oo, hindi namin sila pwedeng i-push na magagalit sila. Siguro dahil gano'n. Dahil sobrang makasalanan naman talaga yon kapag nagpapa-abort ka, di ba? Dahil siguro sarili yun natin, mga Katoliko. Kaya siguro walang nagpapa-abort gaano.
And that brings us to the end. Thank you for listening. Aim high!